Often hailed as one of the most enchanting faces of the silent film era, Corinne Griffith's life was as glamorous as they come, complete with wealth, multiple marriages, and a dash of intrigue. Even her birth was a lie. However, her existence was also woven with an intricate web of untruths, some spun for profit, others for amusement, and some that were just downright peculiar. Let's find out some of the rare stories from Corinne Griffith's life while you enjoy some of her rare photos. Corinne Griffith, born as Corinne Griffin in Texarkana, Texas in 1894, was the daughter of a man who was both a church minister and a train conductor. Some even claim he served as the mayor of Texarkana. Notably, he was a full 20 years senior to Griffith's mother, a young woman of just 20 years old. Griffith herself was born in Texarkana, but later she claimed her origins lay in the nearby city of Waco. An innocuous fabrication? Perhaps, but it was only the beginning for Griffith. Her younger sister and she were sent to a boarding school by their parents. Not some prestigious Swiss institution, but the Sacred Heart Convent in New Orleans. Life proceeded smoothly until 1912, when a devastating phone call delivered the news of their father's sudden demise. Griffith recovered from her father's loss and found success in a Mardi Gras beauty pageant in New Orleans. Among the spectators was Rollin S. Sturgeon, who saw potential in her and proposed a future in the entertainment industry. Intrigued, Griffith followed Sturgeon to Hollywood, a dream many young women yearn for. However, this tale's authenticity is questionable. There exist alternative stories about Griffith's journey to the Hollywood screens. One version describes that following her father's death, Griffith, along with her mother and sister, relocated to Southern California. Here the pageant was in Santa Monica, and Sturgeon was not merely a spectator but a judge. He offered her a contract following her triumph. Yet this tale may also be fabricated. Yet another narrative lacks any mention of a beauty pageant. Griffith, accompanied by her mother and sister, had supposedly moved to Southern California and bumped into Sturgeon at an elite party in Crescent City. He offered her a contract with Vitagraph on the spot. The existence of these conflicting accounts about Griffith's Hollywood journey can be attributed to the fact that when it comes to Corinne Griffith, not all is as it appears. Film historians unanimously agree that Griffith signed a contract with Vitagraph Films in 1916, earning a weekly wage of $15. It was at this point that she switched her surname from Griffin to Griffith. No one knows the reason. Her initial roles were in short films, opposite silent film star Earl Williams, leaving her wondering if these minor roles would lead to something substantial. Her moment of breakthrough arrived in 1920. Griffith secured not one, but two parts in Vitagraph's upcoming film. She played both Adrienne Landreth and her twin sister in the Broadway bubble. Critics lauded it as the pinnacle of her career. As we'll explore further, playing her own sister was just a teaser of the extraordinary and mystifying life Griffith would lead off-screen. Simultaneously with the release of the Broadway bubble, Griffith was involved in a romantic entanglement. She had met and married Webster Campbell, a multifaceted personality in show business who was an actor, producer, and screenwriter. This alliance seemed promising not just for her personal life, but also for her career. However, the reality turned out to be starkly different. 3 years into this marriage, Griffith made a disconcerting discovery. She realized that her marriage was a colossal error and her career was stagnating. Campbell's alcohol addiction, and even worse, his abusive behavior were taking a toll on her. Without wasting any time, Griffith decided to end the relationship. While she was at it, she also chose to terminate her contract with Vitagraph, which she deemed unsatisfactory. Aware of her worth, she was determined to find a studio that would compensate her in accordance with her star status. Consequently, Griffith bid farewell to her husband and Vitagraph, paving the way for a more advantageous association with First National Pictures. This transition was a significant escalation, as she was offered a weekly salary of $2,500 by the new studio. The challenge now was to demonstrate that she was deserving of this hefty sum. Her debut film with First National Pictures was Black Oxen, and the pressure to prove herself was immense. In Black Oxen, Griffith once again portrayed a dual character, sort of. She embodied an aging European socialite who stumbles upon a miraculous youth-restoring formula. This formula, a combination of glandular treatments and surgery using X-rays, transforms her into a youthful version of herself. Her character exploits her regained youth to entangle a younger love interest, leading to expected chaos. The film was a success, thereby cementing Griffith's position in Hollywood. But her personal life, which eventually mirrored this film's plot, was even more convoluted. After Black Oxen, Griffith starred in a series of successful films, including Love's Wilderness in 1924. In this film, her on-screen husband fakes his death to escape his existing life. It appears that Griffith drew inspiration from her films for some of the more eccentric elements of her life in the future. Amidst her thriving career, Griffith also had time for personal relationships. Post-divorce in 1924, she married Walter Marosco, a man with a similar profile to her ex-husband, being a producer, writer, director, and actor. It was hoped that he wouldn't exhibit the same destructive behavior as Webster Campbell. Being fiercely independent, Griffith believed in financial self-reliance. As she started earning hefty sums from her films, she made a wise decision. She invested in real estate. This venture proved to be an astute move, amassing her a staggering $500,000 from various properties by 1927. However, this was only the beginning of her entrepreneurial journey. After delivering 3 consecutive hits for First National Pictures, Griffith, in 1928, decided to part ways with the studios and take a massive leap of faith. She, along with her husband Marosco, established Corinne Griffith Productions. Griffith was prepared to demonstrate that she was capable of managing both her acting career and the production business. Her inaugural film was The Garden of Eden, intended for release by United Artists. One can only presume that Griffith was fraught with anxiety. She had severed ties with the studios and the success of the film was uncertain. Was she headed for a hit or a miss? While The Garden of Eden received positive reviews from critics, it failed to resonate with the audience, resulting in disappointing box office returns. As an actress and now producer, Griffith was deeply affected by the film's failure. This led her to reassess her career and make an unexpected decision. She rejoined First National Pictures, which may have seemed like a step back, but it was far from it. In 1929, Griffith starred in The Divine Lady, a film based on the real-life love affair between Admiral Nelson and Emma Hamilton. Produced by her husband, the film was a massive success, and Griffith's performance was highly acclaimed. The newly established Academy Awards recognized her talent and nominated her for Best Actress. Unfortunately, Griffith lost the award to another silent film legend, Mary Pickford. However, The Divine Lady held a significant distinction that would revolutionize cinema. The Divine Lady was among the first films to feature more than a mere soundtrack. The film was enriched with singing and sound effects, providing a novel experience for audiences. It seemed inevitable that movies with spoken dialogue, or talkies, were on the horizon. Griffith was understandably anxious. How would her voice sound on film? Before she agreed to feature her voice in a film, Griffith took some significant precautions. She persuaded the studio to ensure her transition to talkies was relatively risk-free. In 1929, Griffith insured her voice for an eye-popping $1 million. However, no amount of insurance could have prepared Griffith for what was to come next. Talkies were rapidly gaining popularity, and Griffith had no choice but to adapt. Her first talkie was Lilies of the Field in 1930, a remake of one of her previous silent films. The audience was eager to hear Griffith's voice, but their excitement quickly turned into disappointment. The harsh reality was that the world's most beautiful actress did not possess an equally beautiful voice. Griffith's voice was a shock to audiences. Critics claimed that she talked through her nose. This unfortunate fact further contributed to the film's failure at the box office. Griffith had experienced failures before, but this was different. It was clear that audiences were not fond of her voice, and as talkies were becoming the norm, her career seemed to be teetering on the edge. Griffith managed to feature in a few more films, but it was evident that her voice was ill-suited for talkies. Many silent film stars ended up in poverty after the advent of talkies, and it appeared that Griffith was heading down the same path. In 1934, she officially retired from show business and divorced her husband, facing the end of her career alone. But what was her next move? The first step in Griffith's plan was to marry a wealthy individual. Enter George Preston Marshall, whose 3 names hinted at his affluence. Marshall was the owner of the NFL team, the Washington Redskins, now known as the Washington Commanders. Marshall was infamous for his refusal to include black players in his team. It remains unclear what Griffith thought about Marshall's prejudice, but she did compose the team's fight song, Hail to the Redskins. However, Griffith had bigger plans for her husband's football team. Griffith identified a unique opportunity in her husband's venture. Why not infuse some glamour from show business into the world of football? Besides writing the team's song, she redesigned the team's uniforms. She persuaded her husband to hire a 55-piece band to play before the games and a swing band to entertain during the games. However, Griffith wasn't content with just adding music to the mix. She yearned for drama. If you attended a Washington Redskins game during this period, you'd get more than just a match. At halftime, a 93-piece band dressed in full Native American attire would take to the field. This was before the era of political correctness, and the performances were wildly popular. In addition, a large teepee that periodically emitted smoke was set up on the field, and the sound of tom-tom drums could be heard in the distance. After revolutionizing her husband's football team, Griffith set her sights on transforming lives. In 1941, Griffith expressed her desire to become a mother. She and her husband adopted 2 girls, Cynthia and Pamela. Griffith spoke about the girls in a Los Angeles Times feature about her life. However, following this article, a peculiar mystery arose. The girls were never mentioned again in the press, not even in Griffith's obituaries. It was as if the girls had vanished. Whether Cynthia and Pamela truly existed or were just part of another enigma linked to Corinne Griffith remains a mystery. Griffith was not content with merely living off her husband's wealth. Even though marrying a wealthy man was part of her plan, she yearned for financial independence. Using the money she earned from films, Griffith continued to invest in real estate, particularly in Los Angeles. She focused on one intersection, Wilshire Boulevard and South Beverly Drive. Griffith had grand plans. She wanted to own 4 buildings, one at each corner of the intersection and each named after her. Griffith's fortune grew rapidly and was independent of her husband's wealth. As she began to amass wealth, she noticed that the government was taking a significant amount in taxes. This infuriated Griffith, and she channeled her outrage into writing speeches against income tax and the 16th Amendment that permitted it. She was convinced that most taxes paid by Americans were squandered due to government corruption. Eventually, she delivered nearly 500 speeches opposing income tax. Griffith also spoke passionately about women's financial independence. She took great pride in the wealth she had accrued without a man's help, arguing that women would garner more respect from their husbands if they were financially independent. She disliked the lengths wives had to go to secure the money they needed. Griffith was certainly a progressive woman for her time. With a wealth of ideas and opinions, Griffith needed an outlet to disseminate her views. After establishing herself as a successful actress and real estate investor, Griffith turned to writing. She penned 11 books, 2 of which became bestsellers. Her memoir about growing up in Texarkana was adapted into a feature film called Papa's Delicate Condition in 1962, with Jackie Gleason portraying Griffith's eccentric father. While Griffith's career was once again on the rise, her marriage was in a less favorable state. By 1958, Griffith's marriage to her 3rd husband, the football team owner Marshall, was on the rocks. She had humorously dubbed him the Marshall without a plan, alluding to the U.S. Marshall Plan meant to provide financial aid to Europe post-WBM II. Her mockery of her husband was quite public, and their marriage soon dissolved. With an abundance of free time, Griffith found herself drawn back to a familiar sphere. In 1962, for reasons known only to her, Griffith came out of retirement to make a movie called Paradise Alley. Not related to Sylvester Stallone's film by the same name, it did feature numerous luminaries from the silent film era, perhaps enticing Griffith to participate. The film had a limited release and went largely unnoticed in Hollywood. While this film had minimal impact, Griffith's subsequent marriage would create quite a stir. As one of the wealthiest women in America, Griffith took a cue from affluent men and began a relationship with a younger man. Danny Scholl, a 44-year-old musical theater actor, was 25 years Griffith's junior. Despite her substantial real estate fortune and a young lover, Griffith failed to learn one lesson from her affluent male counterparts. She didn't need to marry her youthful beau. However, in 1965 she did, and the repercussions were disastrous. Griffith quickly realized her marriage to school was a mistake. Some accounts suggest it took only days post-wedding for her to seek an annulment. When the judge denied her request, Griffith claimed the marriage was invalid due to lack of intimacy between the couple. The judge remained unmoved. It would be a divorce, and it promised to be a complicated affair. While awaiting the commencement of the divorce trial, the judge ordered Griffith to pay Scholl $200 per month in alimony. Griffith, who had strongly opposed income tax, was now forced to endure the financial pain of alimony. Needless to say, she was eager to put an end to these payments. By the time the divorce trial began in 1966, Scholl had already received a significant amount from Griffith. Frustrated and desperate, Griffith devised a peculiar plan to rid herself of Scholl permanently. She didn't resort to hiring a hitman, that was too risky. Instead, she made a startling declaration in court: "I am not Corinne Griffith." If this woman wasn't Corinne Griffith, then who was she? The woman claimed to be Augusta Griffin, Griffith's younger sister, and revealed that Corinne Griffith had died in 1924 and she had assumed her identity. The woman in court, whether Griffith or Griffin, made another shocking claim. She had never married her two previous husbands. When asked her age, she responded that she didn't know, having stopped counting at age 13. Furthermore, she stated her religion, Christian Science, did not permit her to declare her true age. Griffith was either delusional, attempting to bamboozle the judge, or truly her sister. The courtroom was in chaos. The judge struggled to determine who was making these assertions, Corinne Griffith or Augusta Griffin. Two of Griffith's friends, actors Betty Blythe and Claire Windsor, were called to the stand to provide clarity. Amidst a profound silence, both women contradicted the claimant, asserting that she was indeed Corinne Griffith. Despite the assertions of her friends in court, Griffith clung to her story. It was only in subsequent interviews with journalists that she presented a different account, one even more outlandish than the first. Perhaps recognizing the impossibility of passing for her significantly younger sister, Griffith invented another sibling, a twin. Suddenly, Griffith was her twin sister Mary, and a new tale was woven. According to Griffith, the whole saga began in Mexico. Griffith claimed that the original Corinne Griffith had been filming in Mexico when she fell ill with a local disease and died. In a panic, the film's director Adolf Zukor was at a loss for how to complete the film. Learning of Griffith's twin sister, he hastily reached out. As Mary, Griffith described receiving the shocking news of her twin's death from Zukor. Overwhelmed with grief, she could barely comprehend Zukor's proposition to replace Corinne in the film. Mary protested her lack of acting experience, but Zukor persisted. Zukor offered Mary a staggering $1 million to step into Corinne's role and finish the Mexican film. Despite the shock of her sister's death, Mary began to consider the offer. The sum was substantial, and she reasoned it was what Corinne would have wanted. Agreeing to Zukor's proposal, Mary traveled to Mexico to complete Griffith's role. But after experiencing the allure of fame, Mary made a controversial decision. Mary chose to not only replace her sister in the film, but to assume Corinne Griffith's entire life. This led to the sensational confession during the divorce proceedings between Corinne Griffith and Danny Scholl. It was an astonishing revelation, and likely a desperate ploy to evade paying alimony to her estranged husband. In the end, the judge did not require Griffith to pay alimony, though she was saddled with Scholl's legal fees. It might have seemed like a financial blow, but the worst was yet to come. In 1966, Griffith was victim to a terrifying home invasion. Intruders demanded her valuables, but she refused to unlock her jewelry case. When the criminals threatened the lives of her servants, Griffith had no choice but to comply. Her $100,000 collection of gems and jewels was not worth human life. Despite the public's perception of her, Griffith's friends knew her as a prim and proper woman. She was known for her passionate speeches and fiery letters, yet in her personal life, she was reserved and conservative. She had a strong aversion to smoking and swearing, earning her the nickname the Orchid Lady. In July 1979, Griffith suffered a stroke and was taken to St. John's Hospital, where she passed away on July 13, 1979. Surprisingly, the news of her death seemed to slip under the radar. As a former Hollywood star, author, and once one of the wealthiest women globally, it took an uncharacteristic 2 weeks for the Daily Variety to report her passing.